What is up, Copy Squad? It's your boy Kyle Milligan coming to you live from Boca Raton, Florida. And today I want to talk about how self-discipline is a lie and give you a simple roadmap for massive success, as I believe it to be the case, that it doesn't really rely on your discipline or your willpower or your motivation so much as a couple other key things that I've picked up along my journey. And I saw something on Facebook today that really prompted this whole video where someone posted, like, what's the key to self-discipline? It's either that you want it bad enough or you don't. And when I saw that, and I saw people like jumping on, giving it hearts and thumbs up and saying, wow, this is truth, this is gold, you either want it or you don't. And I categorically reject that concept based on my experience, having had the opportunity to lead near a dozen writers at one of the fastest up and coming financial publishing companies in the world, producing 7 figures on a weekly basis in revenue. And I want to kind of share my crash course / roadmap to success, because I think that this idea that you either want it or you don't is actually kind of damaging and misleading. First off, the problem, right? So I think what most folks don't understand when they're going into this thing of like how to achieve success is they don't understand a couple key concepts and battles that they're already engaged in and facing on a daily basis. And the first one I want to draw your attention to is this thing called the resistance, which you can read about in this book called The War of Art, Break Through the Blocks and Win Your Inner Creative Battles. So this book talks about this immutable force called the resistance that basically tries to sabotage your efforts at creating every single day. And every chapter, he kind of goes through the difference of like what you think is to be like a moment of procrastination or some sort of real legitimate delay, which is like a rationalization. Like, I mean, it's just a chapter after chapter after chapter about how resistance works. It's invisible. It doesn't care. It's here to sabotage your daily efforts to create stuff. And I think a lot of people just don't have any knowledge that they're engaged in that creative battle every single day, particularly writers, that every day when you step up and you decide to sit down in the chair and write, you're battling an invisible force called the resistance. And again, I recommend everyone just read this. This is like my Bible. But read this by Stephen Pressfield, The War of Art. And then you might also want to read a couple of his other books that I got here. But when you realize that, first off, you're not just battling against, like, you are sort of battling against yourself, but you're also not. It's not that you just don't want it. It's that there actively is. Acknowledge that there is a procrastination force in the universe. It's kind of like trying to slow you down and battle against you. So once you're kind of aware, like, okay, I've got a challenge to my willpower that's attacking me every single day. It's like, it can't be slowed down. It has no stamina bar. It just comes and comes and comes, and it's going to try to derail you every single day you try to do something, create something. So on that note, I want to switch gears a little bit to the idea of willpower and battling the resistance. So when you're aware there is a resistance attacking your willpower every day, the next step is someone's going to say, well, you either want it or you don't. You're either going to fight the resistance or you're not. To which I say that is also categorically untrue as well. And I want to point to a couple studies, and I'll share my screen a little bit here and see if I can show you something that basically prove this to be true. The One Thing, surprisingly simple truth behind extraordinary results. So in this book, The One Thing by Gary Keller, who's like the founder of Keller Realty, like the biggest realty company in the world, this book basically outlines this talk about willpower, saying that willpower is more like a gauge. Whenever you wake up and you start making decisions, your willpower gauge starts to fatigue little bit by little bit by little bit. And that what you really need to do, and a lot of books about like essentialism, sticking to one thing, a lot of books talking about this willpower gauge and how reducing that decision fatigue is probably a really big factor in like your keys to success. And there's another one here. Switch, How to Change Things When Change is Hard, has a great analogy for how you will always lose the willpower and desire struggle pretty much 10 out of 10 times. And in this book, Switch, they talk about your brain has like two different sort of, has a bunch of different things going in its favor and working against it. And your decision-making side of your brain, your logical side of your brain, your willpower side of your brain that says, I want to be successful. We know from persuasion, we know from sales, we know from just psychology in general. There's a good book on this called Thinking Fast and Slow by Dan Kahneman. But it basically says there's two sides of your brain, the thinking brain and the feeling brain. And in the book Switch, they talk about the thinking brain as a person and the feeling brain as an elephant. Okay, the feeling brain is an elephant. This is like, so imagine like the person is riding the elephant and trying to steer this elephant as the elephant decides to go where it wants to go, when it wants to go. Okay, so the person trying to move this elephant is your willpower. It's your desire. It's like your decision fatigue gauge, basically. And for a limited amount of time, a finite amount of time, your person inside of you, or like your decision-making body, or the logical side of your brain, can steer the elephant to a certain extent. But then eventually the elephant's just too big. It's going to overpower the little rider, and it's going to go wherever it wants to go. So the third part of that inside this book called Switch is shaping the path so that the elephant goes in the direction that you want it to go. And that's where I want to kind of come to this really important realization, like recapping a couple things that we just talked about. One, every day you are battling, whether you, I don't know what label you want to give it, but in the War of Art, talks about the resistance. Every single day you're battling the resistance. This is like a force of procrastination. There's just, read this book. I could sit here and just read that book. Every day the resistance is fighting against you. So knowing that you have an antagonist breaking down your willpower, okay, then you realize that your willpower, your logical side of your brain, is a little itty bitty person sitting on top of an elephant of emotion, trying to steer it in the direction that it wants to go, right? And I'm speaking from a place where, again, like, who am I to say this? Like, I, in 3 years, have gone from nobody to basically running a copy team at one of the biggest financial publishers in the world, and I don't claim to have any real willpower, okay? Like, if you leave a box of chocolate chip cookies in the kitchen counter, I'm done. I'm going to eat all of them. I don't have any self-discipline, any sort of willpower like that. Like, that sort of stuff is very taxing for me. And I want to talk about like how to operate and be successful in spite of having no willpower. So you've got a force breaking down your willpower actively every single day. Okay, we know this to be true. We know this to be the reality. And then you can steer that for just a little bit, but then you're going to collapse out of exhaustion. So if you have more than one goal in your life, right, like it can get really exhausting to stay on top of all of them if you have all this decision fatigue and all these things happening to you. So I'm going to share screen just one more time because I think this is really important. It's probably the final thing we're going to talk about is in Switch. They say that the rider can only control the elephant for so long, so you have to shape the path for the elephant in a way that's conducive for the rider to relax, and the elephant will just go in the direction that the rider wants it to go. So what we're talking about here is world building, okay? So that's where I want to bring your attention to this book, Atomic Habits. So Atomic Habits is a book about, and this is where I really feel like this is where success comes from. Success is an end result. It's a lag measure. It's not a lead measure. The lead measure are the things, your inputs, what you're doing every day. And that's what Atomic Habits is all about. He lists like the 4 different behavioral change sort of theories to change your behavior. It's funny because they're very close to New, Easy, Safe, and Big, my sales process. His are like, make it obvious, make it easy, make it appealing. I think what's really important is that in Atomic Habits, he argues the same point, that you really don't have a lot of control. You have certain limited amount of control via willpower. And instead what you need to do is build an environment, shape the path, like they say in Switch, shape the path so that your daily inputs and practices sort of result, they become the end result as a matter of it just happens that way. Because, you know, if you want to go to the gym in the morning, have all your gym clothes laid out. If you want to not eat chocolate chip cookies, make it very difficult to reach chocolate chip cookies. Get them out of your house, get them out of your sight. Again, I think that the argument that it is a game of willpower, I think I will lose all the willpower battles day in and day out. I'm so bad about it that I've literally started using a meal prep service to prevent me from having to like decide what I'm going to cook or eat or going grocery shopping, things like that. I found that people think that, you know, successful people, and he says it in Atomic Habits, I think, that, you know, people with the most self-discipline never actually have to exercise it. They've simply crafted a world where they don't have to deal with that stuff. And I think when people look and they see, oh, Kyle, how did you go from, you know, this to that? what's the trick or secret? And I think it would be such a cop out to say, oh, you got to have the discipline. You got to want it. I don't think that's true at all. I've simply created a world, shaped the path, and developed habits. I am just a bundle of habits, which is why I believe I am not special. I believe anyone who adopted my habits would have the exact same results as me. What I do in terms of like the copywriting world is I am constantly, like again, in the last couple months, I've produced or copy chiefed over 20 different promotions that have resulted in millions and millions of dollars. And because I'm constantly engaged, and also on top of that, I have the Copy Squad Inner Circle group, which I could throw a little banner up here. The Copy Squad Inner Circle group, where I'm reviewing members' copy every other week. And then in between that, I'm breaking down sales letters in that group every other week. I'm just constantly engaged in the habit of interacting with copy. And again, I treat copy as a language of sales and selling to emotions. So I believe anyone who engages in the exact same habits as me will have very similar results. I don't think that I have especially strong discipline or willpower. I simply have optimized my daily experience to facilitate the habits that create the end result that I want. And there's one more big habit I want to drop here at the end, which is the habit of deep work, which is the ultimate sort of optimization of your time, environment, space, and your work. Every single day, I try to accomplish 2 hours of deep work. And for me, as a copy chief, that is either reviewing one of my copywriters' promos and their copy and helping mentor them, or writing 1 hour of my own copy or doing research for my own sort of promotional work. If you can isolate yourself and just accomplish 2 hours of deep work a day, that's the ultimate like shape the path, sort of like make it easy on your rider, is just get 2 hours. Turn off the phones, turn off all distractions for 2 hours. Just do what it is that you're great at doing. Your ultimate revenue driving sort of craft, the thing that you could never hire out because it is your unique ability and specialty. For 2 hours a day, do that and make sure you knock that out, because it's going to require the bulk of your willpower to protect that time. Unless you create the world around it where you can just sit down and just do it at the same time every single day. But it's going to take a lot of your energy and willpower to do that. Check out the books I just recommended. Read those. Thanks so much for tuning in, and peace out, Copy Squad.